Recorded Books presents Boys Enter the House, The Victims of John Wayne Gacy and the Lives They Left Behind, by David Nelson, narrated by T. Ryder Smith. A quote from The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I am disappearing, inch by inch, into this house. Author's note. Nearly 33 years after police arrested John Wayne Gacy, I found myself living in the same neighborhood as some of his victims. Uptown, on the north side of Chicago, has become a different place since the 1970s. The Appalachian families, at one point the largest segment of Uptown's population, have long scattered, either to the suburbs or back to Appalachia. While many of Uptown's original buildings remain, many of them have been renovated or removed to make way for gyms or coffee shops or glassy apartment buildings devoid of any coziness or comfort. Today, you can find traces of the past on the north side. In Uptown specifically, you can still take in a jazz set until 5 a.m. at the Green Mill, or live honky-tonk music at Carol's Pub, the last vestige of the Appalachians. You can still walk Sunnyside Mall, where Samuel Stapleton and Randy Raffett hung out together, or pass by their school, Stockton, where Dale Landingen, Billy Kindred, and Billy Carroll also attended in the 1970s. In the area formerly known as Newtown, very little remains of the vibrant gay community of the 1970s, where several of the boys roamed or disappeared from, although nearby Boys Town carries on its echo. In North Center, you can still go to the Gale Street Inn, where Gacy himself used to schmooze, and where, in 2015, I listened to the story of Judy Patterson, who confronted Gacy himself to ask about her missing boyfriend, Greg Godzik. For the stories that follow, these sacred memories are the primary source. Relatives, friends, and significant others have all stepped forward to retell their memories, not just of the case, but of the times before their brother, their boyfriend, or their friend became a face in the newspaper. These memories form not just the narrative structure, but the very heart and blood of this book. Of course, memories are always a bit elusive. Like mirages, they shift and vanish as years go by. Sometimes they can conflict with the memories of another person, which I encountered in some situations when interviewing multiple siblings of victims. Other times, official records or statements from the time may slightly contradict. One witness's memory conflicted in small ways with their testimony at the trial in 1980. Boys Enter the House attempts to balance these modern-day memories against the many records, news reports, and witness statements recorded back in the 1970s and 80s. The reader should note that these stories are not necessarily told chronologically. For instance, events happening in one chapter for one boy may not be occurring at the same exact time or year for another boy. Rather, they are told together for thematical purposes. Wherever dialogue or other direct quotes from past events are included, they have been recorded by witness statements or police records, or are taken from the quotations of those who remembered hearing them spoken. Obviously, within this book are many depictions of violence, including murder and rape. But readers should note that in addition to these acts, Boys Enter the House also depicts instances of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, often perpetrated among family members against child victims. Many of these stories overlap with depictions of sex work, specifically between male sex workers and older male clients. Boys Enter the House favors the term sex worker over prostitute, which brings connotations of criminality and stigmatization. In some instances, I have chosen to use the words hustler or chicken to reflect the colloquialisms of the time. Sex work is work, and sex workers come from unique backgrounds, ultimately deciding to pursue this work for a variety of reasons and circumstances, many of them the result of systemic factors. those who hire sex workers, though I acknowledge that they can often take advantage of or exploit sex workers, are treated here with similar sensitivity. This book favors the use of the term client, though it does use the colloquialisms John, chicken hawk, or hawk in keeping with the slang of the day. In many situations in this book, this sex work is consensual. In others, it occurs immorally between adults and underage children. Terminology and societal perception of many of these topics continues to change, and I strive to be part of any new understanding that both holds the necessary people accountable and empowers others in the way they deserve. Throughout this book, I have striven to keep focus on victims as much as possible, not just the immediate victims of John Wayne Gacy or other abusers and villains depicted within, but also the collateral victims who continue to hurt. Ultimately, Boys Enter the House is a coming-of-age story, much like the short story Boys by Rick Moody, from which this book draws its title, another story of boyhood and the various milestones and challenges it entails. When I first began reaching out to the loved ones of Gacy's victims, I often hesitated, wondering if they would see the merit in retelling the case through the eyes of those who suffered the most. For many of them, the remembrance has been cathartic, and for a few others, they did not live to see the completion of this book. For all of them, though, I hope that I've told their stories honestly, with respect, and that they find their peace, even as the tragedies of this case continue to ripple, now nearly 43 years after Gacy's arrest. In some ways, not so long ago. Introduction. You know the story of John Wayne Gacy. You've seen the pictures of the smiling clown standing proudly outside the suburban home. You've heard of the young men and boys buried in the dark crawl space below Gacy's ranch house. Maybe you've watched the news footage of the investigators bringing them out from the house in white body bags and loading them into a coroner's van, the flash of camera lights illuminating it all for the eyes of America. But you don't know the story of those boys. You might think you know. You might have heard them called, dismissed as runaways or hustlers. But you don't know their names. You don't know their families, where they come from, how they live their lives in short bursts of light and love. Primarily, their lives took shape in the 1960s, alongside the ongoing upheaval and social change that followed them into the 1970s, when their lives blossomed. That same change and upheaval also gave rise to the type of crime that ultimately took their lives. While at the time someone still had a higher chance of being struck by lightning than meeting a mass murderer, the term serial killer was coined in the 1980s. These crimes commanded national attention in ways that inflated their magnitude and frequency in society. In the 20th century, Chicago, where most of these boys came of age, had already earned a reputation with its many gangsters and headline murders, including the St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929 or the case of Leopold and Loeb in 1924. But by the middle of the century, it had also seen a spasm of violence unlike any other, with motives unfathomable and unknown to people at the time. James Degnan and his wife, Helen, woke on the morning of January 7th, 1946. They went to check on their 6-year-old daughter, Suzanne, who had not emerged from her bedroom inside the family's large home on Kenmore Avenue in the neighborhood of Edgewater, immediately north of Uptown on the city's north side. In her room, the parents found an empty bed and a note demanding $20,000 in ransom, an amount that could easily be paid.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.